Hello again. Now, today I thought we'd have a go at doing something like this. These are just postcards which I've created to decorate. I'm doing the 100-day project and I'm doing a postcard every day, so these are quite a nice size just for a little project, just to sort of focus my mind on something arty, but something relatively quick. So I tend to make a lot of backgrounds all in one go, and then I've got something to do every day which is quick. These are using some of Seth Apter's new products, namely the crackle texture paste. There's also distress ink pad colour in the back, and some highlighting with black ink, but also this one you can probably see better. The crackles here and the whole panel had antiquing cream, Gesso antiquing cream. Once the crackle had all cracked and dried completely, I worked in the antiquing cream, which is this Gesso Media antiquing cream, and this is carbon black. And what you do, you coat everything with it, wait while it dries, and then with a damp soft cloth you get rid of what you don't want. It tends to cling to texture, so you can see all these textures have been highlighted, and it's gone in between all the crackles and brought it out absolutely lovely. I did the same with this one, so you can see there's areas of dark that it's picked up the texture. Once that had dried after I'd wiped it back, I then added some sepia archival ink off this ink pad with a sponge again, so that gave it a sepia areas as well on top. So we'll have a go at something, it'll be different to that, but something similar. If you watched the previous video, or it might be a couple of videos back, this was a panel that I was mopping up ink and paint that I hadn't used, so that it wasn't wasted. So it's got little bits of distress ink on it, archival ink, paint, a little bit of ice, quinacridone gold, all sorts of things on it. And then I just, so that it had an overall colour, I just added a wash of quinacridone gold. Just added water to it and then just painted it on with a brush, and obviously the watercolour card absorbed the colour. So this is 350 GSM watercolour card, and it's just had mop-up bits from when I was doing the previous background, which was this one. So this is quite dark, but I don't want it as dark as that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some gesso. I'll start off sort of quite lightly. This is my harder brayer rather than the soft brayer, and it doesn't pick up, it doesn't lay down colour everywhere. So as you can see, there's gaps, which I quite like, because it gives a bit of a mottled effect. So that's got a few little lines, so we'll just dab those out with our finger. Don't particularly want lines, so your fingers are great for doing things that are more delicate. So I don't think there's any harsh lines left. So I'll dry that, and as I've done before, I don't waste any mediums. So I'm going to pick this gesso up. I could put it in a journal, but I can also pick it up onto this other postcard and brayer it off as well. I've got a little bit of tissue, I could pick it up. Now this is quite a nice jelly print that I did, so I'm just, there's a nice area there, There we are. It's just picked up some of that nice texture. And it isn't wasting the gesso that I've got there. But it's added something to this print, I think, because we've got nice little areas there. Set that aside. I'll just wipe the gesso up, put that aside to dry. It may even be dry, nearly. I'll just give it a quick blast. And then we'll add we might add some more colour. Quite like that. Do I want more colour? I think we do want a little bit more colour. Just to pick up the background colour, I think we'll have a little bit of vintage photo. Let me just make sure my brayer's dry. Yeah, I think it is. So I'll pick up a little bit of our vintage photo on our brayer. And then we'll just go over the top and add a little bit of colour to the gesso. Which isn't quite as stark white then. There we are. Might add a little bit, just a little bit more. Yes, I think we will. We'll add quite a bit more. Because the thing with the crackled texture paste is it does sometimes absorb the distress inks, so it'll bring it through to the top surface, which is quite nice. So if I add distress inks, which is water reactive at the base underneath the cracked texture, it should pick it up and bring it through. So that's knocked that back. I'm going quite a lot on the corners because that's where I'm going to put most of the crackle paste. Just leave this little bit, just a bit paler in the centre. That's actually quite a nice background without the crackle paste, but once we add that, it will be absolutely gorgeous, I think. So I tend to, yeah, crackle paste. Just make sure that you clean the nozzle of your pouches before you put the lid on again. So I'm going to use my fingers again. You can use a spatula, but I've got more control with my fingers. So I'm going to add quite a lot at the corners. And like I've done before, I'm going to just feather it out with my finger, just sort of dabbing motions. You can see it's already picking up some of the distress colour and it bleeds through, and I think that's really a nice effect. Don't want to overwork this as it stops it from cracking. So I'm sort of feathering it out so that it's more natural looking. And as it goes thinner, you'll get thinner cracks. just layering a little bit. I'll just add a little bit in the background. And hopefully that should look nice when it's dry. So we'll set it aside to dry now, and then we'll come back when it's dried and add some antiquing cream or some ink. I haven't heat dried Seth's texture pastes. I don't know if they work when they're heat dried. I always prefer to leave things to dry naturally with crackle effects, because it always seems to work such a lot better if things are dried naturally. So we'll come back in a while and see how that's done. Alright, so we're back, and the crackle texture paste has crackled. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. I did help it along a little bit with a bit of heat, but I do think you get better crackles if you leave it completely to dry naturally. But this just had a little bit of help because I wanted to get on with recording the video. So I've got my Deco Art antiquing cream and some baby wipes. I wring them out so that they aren't completely wet, they're just damp. So I just wring them out a little bit, and then just with a brush I usually do it on the side, so I'll do it on the side. Just get a little bit of the antiquing cream and just brush it on, and you're sort of working it into the cracks and crevices because it'll show them up more. So I just go all the way around the edges where we've got our crackle paste. Whoops. If we need a bit more, we'll add a bit more. I'll just add it neat there. Because I'm adding this to the crackles, I'm also going to add it a little bit to across the background. I've got various different things on the background because it was a mop-up piece, and it had ice, it had gesso, it had all sorts on it, and some of those will create a resist and some won't. So it'll absorb the antiquing cream in some areas but not in others, which would be quite nice. Right, whoops, got a drip. It isn't permanent, isn't the antiquing cream, so you can always more or less lift it off. If you completely hated what it had done, you could do a wash with just plain water and it would probably get rid of it out of the cracks. I've never actually done that, but you possibly could try it. I don't always wait while it's dried before I start to try and lift it off, but they do recommend you let it dry. So I've lifted a little bit off there. I'll give it a bit of a whiz and dry it a little. Should be, yeah, that's completely dry now. It's very windy and rainy here today. And then I'm just going to remove a bit more of it. From the crackle. And as you can see, it makes the crackles show up really well and really nicely. I keep turning my baby wipe round so I get a little bit more of a cleaner area. And I don't know if you can tell, the crackle paste has actually picked up a little bit of the colour of the distress inks underneath as well. I did mention it might do that, and it did, which was nice because it makes it not such a stark white all the time. I think it's time for a clean baby wipe. So you can see they show up lovely when the antiquing cream is wiped back and wiped off. There we are. The clean area. And because some of this in the background is gesso, it acts as a resist to anything as well. So some of the antiquing cream has gone through to the back, and I'm not going to wipe that off, but it just adds depth as well. Just quickly, it's shining, so I'll quickly dry it. There we are. So you can probably see here we've got some lovely crackles, and the antiquing cream has gone into the cracks, but I've wiped it off the rest. But this texture here is where I've sprayed on the gesso and it's created a texture, but we've got gaps, and the distress inks and everything that I had on the background are showing through. So I think that's quite a nice panel. I am going to ink around the edges with black and sepia because it's quite dark in the centre and I want it to be framed. So I'm going to use my sepia and my black archival inks just to add a bit of depth to the edges. The black, and then I'll go just in with the sepia as well. You see where I go brush across the crackle paste, it does also highlight the texture as well. And the black and the sepia mix together quite nicely to make a darker sepia colour. Just go black again there. And I just very, very gently go across the texture, but very gently. You don't want streaks or anything with the black, and that just highlights again all the crackles. It's a very geriatric sponge. There we are. So I think that's about ready for a foreground or a focal point. And I hope you like that, and I hope you give it a go. I'm going to add a bit more black. That's it. So there we are.